Alright, hello and welcome to a brand new set of PSP tutorials. In this tutorial, or tutorial 1, we're going to be doing a very basic Hello World in all of the different languages that we support, such as C, C++, Rust, and Zig. Since C and C++ actually rely a lot on boilerplate, this tutorial will go in the order of Rust to Zig to C and C++ at the end. Before we go ahead and actually get started here, one thing that we should go ahead and do is go and download an emulator to actually run our PSP applications. So we're actually going to go ahead and download PPSSPP, which is the current best PSP emulator. It's not great, and I strongly believe that real developers should be developing on real hardware. But for now, for testing and for video purposes, we're going to actually want to go ahead and download PPSSPP. We're going to want the Windows version, and we're going to go ahead and either download the zip or the installer. For ease of use, we're going to go ahead and use the installer, and we're going to use that to test our applications. When our applications build ebu.pbp files, all we're going to go ahead and do is run them in PPSSPP, and it will show us the output to the screen. So going ahead, let's go ahead and install PPSSPP. It's very simple, doesn't take very long, and we can go ahead and launch it. And as you will see, it goes ahead and actually displays on the screen. So for this section of the tutorial, we're going to go ahead and start writing our Rust Hello World program. It's actually very simple. Once Cargo has made this, usually it makes a main.rs file. I've deleted it in this case, just to start with a blank page. We're going to type in main.rs, and then we're going to go ahead and set up a few rules for the compiler to follow. First one is that we're not going to be including the standard library, so no std. And we're also not going to have a main function. It's not going to be called main, it's going to be called PSP main, and that's slightly different. So given that, we're going to add those. The next thing that we need to do is use the PSP crate, so PSP : and then we're going to do the module. So the module is actually one of the important parts of what makes a PSP application. The module is basically the description to the PSP operating system of the name and version of your application and what mode it runs in. By default, I believe this is going to be in user mode, and I don't believe there is an option yet for you to change that. So we're just going to run PSP module, and then we're going to go ahead and give our module name. So in this case, we'll just do tutorial. And then the next two things here are going to be the version major and the version minor. So we're just going to do 1.0. Now that that's created, we're going to create our main function. So public function PSP_main. And it's going to go ahead and be created like this. And all we want to do inside of PSP main is PSP : enable home button. And that's all you need to do there. And then to go ahead and print to the screen, all we're going to do is PSP : dprint ln, so dprint line. It's a macro, and we're going to go ahead and type in whatever we want to say. So, hello from Rust. Now that you've done that, we can go ahead and go into the terminal. Once we're in the terminal, we're going to go into the Rust directory. And then all you need to do to build is cargo PSP. It will go ahead and it will compile all the things that you need. It might take longer on your end because I've run cargo once before, so this probably has built and has cache for that sort of thing. It's going to go ahead and compile everything that you need to go ahead and create a PSP app. And there we go. If we go ahead and basically start PPSSPP, we're going to go to File, Open Directory, and we're going to go ahead and choose our desktop, the PSP tutorials, Rust, Target, and then Mipsel, Sony PSP, and I believe just debug. And that should create this application here. And as you see, it says hello from Rust on the screen. Congratulations, this is your first Hello World tutorial, and I will be uploading a second tutorial today on how you do things such as testing for input. For creating an application in Zig for the PSP, what we're going to go ahead and do is go into Zig and then source. Normally there is actually a main.zig file inside of source. In this case I've decided to omit that in order for us to actually go ahead and write it by hand. So now that we have that, we're going to create main.zig. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to import a module. So we're going to import PSP. So const PSP equals that import. And then I'm going to go ahead and refer to Zig PSP source/PSP utils and then psp.zig. This is just to include the minimal version of the module. Next thing we're going to do is do comp time, create a comp time block, and then we're going to write assembly here. And what we're going to do is we're going to do PSP module _ info, which is the same as macros in other languages. All it does is it's important for the PSP to basically load up an application. It tells you the name of the application and the version and what mode it runs in. In this case, we're going to go ahead and type in Zig tutorial as our module name. The next one is whether it's in kernel or user mode. By default right now we're using user mode, so just type in 0. And then the next two are the version major and the version minor. So version major is 1 and version minor is 0. You can name this whatever you want according to your application, but this would indicate version 1.0 of an application. The next thing that we're going to want to do here is do pub fin main, and then we're going to go ahead and add a error union for void. I choose to do an error union because Zig PSP itself has error handling, so everything is actually fine to go ahead and do that. The next thing that we're going to go ahead and do here is enable the home button callback. So psp.utils.enable and then home button, HB, and CB for callback. So that's all we're going to do. We're going to have the function statement there. Next thing we want to do is initialize the screen. So we're going to do psp.debug.screen init. So now we've initialized the screen, and the last thing that we're going to go ahead and do here is psp.debug.print, and we're just going to go ahead and say hello world from Zig. We're going to go ahead and open up a terminal and go into the Zig folder, and all we need to do is Zig build. And it's going to do some analysis, generate the code. This is the first run, so it's actually going ahead and building a bunch of the tools that we need to actually go ahead and make PSP programs. But now that that's done, we now have a working eboot.ppp. So what we're going to go ahead and do is open PPSSPP. We're going to go ahead and do File, Open Directory. And we're going to go ahead and go into our PSP tutorials and load up Zig as the directory where our eboot.ppp is. To do that, now we get Hello World from Zig printed out onto the PPSSPP screen. If you run this on a PSP, it will work. And in the next tutorial, I'm going to be going over basic things like how to use and detect controls and button presses. Alright. So go ahead and create a C and C++ application. We're going to go ahead and be using the same directory structure. Right now, we're going to be doing the Hello World without the home button callback. And at the end of both the C and C++ sections, I'm going to tell you how to do the actual callback thing. This is actually important because we're going to need this callback for you to be able to actually exit from the PSP. It's a bit more complicated code and it's automatically handled by Rust and Zig, but in this case we do actually have to roll it ourselves. In any case, we're going to go ahead and create our main.c file, and we're going to go ahead and #include. We're going to go ahead and #include PSP kernel.h, and then we're also going to have to go ahead and include the PSP debug.h. Now it's going to give you some errors with the syntax highlighting here, mainly because Visual Studio doesn't actually know where that is. To go ahead and do this, we would actually go ahead and modify some of the settings to point towards where our headers are. For now, I'm just going to go ahead and ignore that, and we're going to go ahead and create PSP module info. This information structure tells you basically how the PSP, or tells the PSP operating system specifically how it's going to go ahead and load the application, what type of application it is, the version, and the name. So the name is going to be, for this case, tutorial. And then we're going to go ahead and do the mode. This mode is going to be the kernel mode versus the regular sort of user mode. In this case, we're just going to be interested in the user mode, which is 0. If you wanted kernel mode, it's 0x1000. So in this case, we're going to do 0, and then we're going to do 1 and then 0. And these last two are the major and minor versions of your application. So this indicates 1.0 is our application version. Then we're going to go ahead and create integer main. And what we're going to do is, inside of main, we're going to go ahead and do PSP debug screen and then init. And this is going to initialize the screen. And then we're going to do PSP debug screen printf. And this is going to printf. And this is going to print to the main frame buffer of the PSP, so you can actually go ahead and see your text. So we're just going to say hello from C. Now with that done, we're going to go ahead and go to the C directory in our terminal, which I've already done, and we're going to go ahead and type make, and it makes the actual application. It produces a bunch of files in this directory, but you're just interested in eboot.ppp. We're going to go ahead and run our emulator, PPSSPP, and we're going to hit File, Open Directory. And then we're going to go to the PSP tutorial section, and then click on C. Inside here, now we get the application that prints out to the screen, hello from C. Like I said, I'm going to be going over how to set up the callbacks at the end of this tutorial, and in the next tutorial, we're going to be taking a look at how to do things for button inputs. Alright, to go ahead and do the C++ version of this tutorial, we're going to go ahead and basically do the same thing as we did before. We have the same exact make file that we had earlier as well. I've just separated the directory to have C++ and C be in separate folders, as I feel that they should have different folders. For the main.cpp file, we're going to do main.cpp, and all we're going to do is go into #include pspkernel.h, which is important, #include psp debug.h, and then we're going to go ahead and do auto main and then int, and then we're going to go ahead and do psp debug screen init, and then psp debug screen printf. And in our printf, we're going to say hello from C++. We're also going to need the PSP module info, which is going to be PSP module info, and then the name of our application, 0, 1, and then 0. For the full explanation of what PSP module info does, go ahead and take a look at C. C and C++ code look pretty much identical, except for the fact that I'm using the sort of deferred syntax here for what the function type is. All we're going to go ahead and do is run make in our terminal, and it's going to go ahead and do make an eboot.ppp. We're going to go ahead and go to PPSSPP, and then File, Open Directory, give it a moment, PSP tutorials, and then we're going to do it in C++. And it's going to print out to the screen, hello from C++. And you've successfully completed this tutorial. To go ahead and resolve this cannot open source file for C and C++, we're going to go ahead and click it. It's going to come up here with a show fixes option, which is going to be this little light bulb. You click on the light bulb and hit edit include setting. What we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to scroll down to this area over here that says include path. And what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to do c:/PSP/SDK/PSP/include, and then /** at the end to recursively search for includes. And then we're going to go ahead and do c:/PSP/SDK/PSP/SDK/include. You don't actually need the ** here if you're actually going to be using the correct directory structure, so we can actually take this off. We're going to go ahead and save that, and then we're going to go ahead and exit out here. And then, as you see, it's going to be completely resolved. Yes, there will be an error on the module declaration here, but it's not going to really affect us very much. And as we can do here, we're going to be able to see all of the different sort of functions that we have access to and all of the different things like that. To deal with setting up PSP callbacks for either C or C++, I'm going to go ahead and create some code here to go ahead and enable the home button callback. It's rather simple and it shouldn't really take too much to show, and I'll be explaining it as I go through it. So the first part that we want to actually do is the callback itself. So when you hit the exit, when you hit the home, and then when you hit that you want to quit, this function will be called. So this is your exit callback. I'm going to create it as int exit underscore callback with integer arg1, integer arg2, and a void pointer common. The arguments here are actually here because it needs to fill out a certain function declaration that it needs to match in order to be passed as a callback. Inside of our callback, we're not really going to do anything. All we're going to do is call SCE kernel exit game. And as you think, that actually exits the game. And inside of here, because we have to return, we'll return 0. The next thing that we want to do is set up the callback thread. This is actually going to be the function that runs for the thread, and it's going to be sleeping and waiting until the actual callback itself. To do this, we're going to do int callback thread is going to have the arguments SCE size, which is going to be the size for args, and then the void pointer arg pointer inside of here. We're not actually going to go ahead and handle these, and all we're going to do is create int. All we're going to do is create int cbid, which is the callback ID, which is SCE kernel create callback. We're going to call it exit callback. Then follow it up by using the callback function, exit underscore callback. And then we're going to go ahead and pass in null if you're in C, or null pointer if you're in C++, for the exit callback. We're just going to use null here. Then we're going to have to go ahead and do SCE kernel register exit callback. So this actually registers the callback, and this is what enables the entire home button to actually run. So cbid, and it takes that. And then we're going to go ahead and call it SCE kernel sleep thread. I can't spell sleep thread, and then we're going to go ahead and call SCE kernel sleep thread CB, which goes ahead and sleeps the thread until it receives a callback. After this, we're just going to go ahead and return 0. In order to actually set up the callbacks, we're going to go ahead and create int setup callbacks. And then inside of this method, we're going to have integer thid, or the thread ID, is equal to SCE kernel create thread for the update thread. You can name this anything that you want. Then we're going to go ahead and use callback thread as the method. The initialization priority can be anything, but we're going to go ahead and do 0x11. The stack size is going to be 0xfa0, and then attributes are 0, and then the optional pointer is null. We're also going to go ahead and check that the thread ID is greater than or equal to 0. It can technically be 0. And And then inside of here, we're going to go ahead and call SCE kernel start thread. And then we're going to do the thread ID, 0 args and null as the arguments that you're passing in. You're not really going to use any of these arguments as we've seen. Then we're going to return the thread ID itself. We could actually make this a void, and we don't actually need to go ahead and use return thread ID. Either way, this is going to enable the callbacks, and you can go ahead and call setup callbacks. If we go into the C directory, if we go into the C++ directory, which is where I've made this so far, we can go ahead and call make, and it's going to generate a program that now actually has the exit button callback. I hope you guys have enjoyed this tutorial. Pretty much we've gone ahead and covered the basics for any Hello World application in C, C++, Rust, and Zig, and now it is fully complete and you should be able to run this on your PSP. That being said, I'll do a second tutorial, and that one will go ahead and cover reading for inputs on the PSP in all of these different languages, so you can actually go ahead and do actions once you have done something like press a button and basically be able to read the controls. So thank you guys for watching. Please like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in another video.